What's up, friends? Welcome back to the channel. Maybe it's just me, but lately it feels like every game is going the early access route. Enshrouded, Normal Room in Hell 2, Hyperlight Breaker, just to name a few. It makes it tough to decide should you jump in now or wait for the game to launch on 1.0. Most of the time we choose the latter, but sometimes the game looks too good to pass up, and that's sadly what brought us to Towerborne. This is an early access 4-player online co-op beat 'em up that's also a live service game. It's pretty unique, so let's not waste any more time and dive into our impressions of Towerborne.
It's so funny. I was thinking about Luke this past week when we were playing Warhammer. Because
do you see that pass?
Yeah, baby.
That pass was so sick.
that was fucking.
I got it.
awesome.
I'm clipping that. Come on now.
So given this is a pretty unique title, let me quickly go over the gameplay loop and structure of the game. Upon booting up, you'll be treated to some cutscenes to flesh out the lore/story of the world in Towerborne. Basically, you play as an ace, a warrior defending the last stronghold of humanity, a big tower called the Belfry. You'll create your own unique ace via a fairly decent character creator. I made a pretty boring character, not gonna lie, but you can definitely get creative with these tools. Following that, you'll go through a tutorial teaching you the basics of combat till you finally arrive at the Belfry, which acts as the hub and social space of the game. It's very reminiscent of the tower from Destiny, and actually this game shares a lot of similarities with Destiny beyond its weirdly similar story setup. Back to the Belfry though, it's here where you can take on missions from the various NPCs, upgrade your gear, and take on bounties from the job board. Now, one of the more unique features of this game is that you don't actually start missions from the Belfry, but from this tile world map instead. The map is covered in a fog of war that you uncover as you move through it and complete missions on these tiles. But not all of these tiles are created equal. Most of the tiles will launch you on what's called a discovery mission, basically a generic mission with randomly generated set pieces. Your main goal though is to make your way to these larger collection of tiles that launch you on a venture mission. These are more handcrafted missions with a tiny bit of story and a big boss at the end. As you move along the board, you'll actually see that some tiles are gated by a higher danger level. This means you'll have to go back to the Belfry and pass a solo trial to up your danger level. These are actually kind of fun, honestly, because it forces you to learn your class apart from just relying on your teammates. Now, alongside the danger level, you'll also need to keep up your gear score as each danger level has a suggested range. This is where we get to the tried and true live service trappings you're used to if you've played anything like Destiny. You earn new gear post missions and can go back to the Belfry to dismantle the gear you don't like and upgrade the gear you plan on keeping. Ultimately, the gameplay loop revolves around working towards that next big venture mission, completing bounties, upgrading your gear, upping your danger level to take on harder content, and on it goes. As I mentioned in the intro, the game is currently exclusive to Steam as it's in early access and only features online co-op. However, when the game comes to Xbox, presumably sometime next year, it will support 4-player local co-op as well. I imagine the Steam version will also receive local support at some point. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about how this plays in co-op. Up to this point, I haven't said a peep about combat, but make no mistake, this game totally nails it in that department. You have 4 different classes to choose from, and they each give you a slightly different playstyle within the beat 'em up genre. There's the Sword and Shield Sentinel, the speedy Rogue Shadow Striker, the Fire Lance wielding Pyro class, and lastly the Rock Breaker sporting 2 giant fist weapons. Combat feels really good in this game, and you're given a ton of tools for skill expression. Each class has a focus ability that fills up over time. For example, the Sentinel's focus ability buffs the stats of your whole party. You also have 2 other skills that change based on your weapon, and these fill up as you complete combos. Because yeah, remember, this is a beat 'em up game, and there's some deep combo chains you can discover the more you play your class. So when you bring all of that together, your focus skill, your weapon skills, your combos, and you start juggling enemies with your team, you get some sick moments like this.
Let's go, boy.
Oh boy, that was
kind of sick.
That was awesome. Oh my god, we're popping off.
Oh baby,
We're so
let's
in
go,
sync. We're so in
boys.
sync, holy shit.
We were so
That
in
was
sync
sick.
there.
Like most beat-em-ups, there isn't that much room for strategy here, but as we started to get more comfortable with our chosen classes, we did notice more opportunities for team play, like how Christian Sentinel can launch enemies in the air, leaving them open for Andrew Knight to dunk on them. Sometimes you'll also come across a challenge during a mission, like protecting a tent from enemies or saving prisoners from cages, and these were great opportunities to coordinate as a team too. The biggest challenge comes from facing challenging boss fights though. The first two bosses weren't a huge deal, but the third one definitely humbled us. This Flickertail boss had a more complex moveset and could apply both fire and poison debuffs. It also didn't help that the first time we faced them we had to contend with a challenge that threw a ton of extra enemies at us. The second time we faced him we thankfully didn't have to deal with that challenge, which brought to question how much the random nature of these challenges could get in the way of the fun. Regardless, after upgrading our gear a bit, we gave it another shot and got the W, so let's talk about gear. So far, the gear game has potential. It's really fun to try different weapons and see what kind of special moves they hold, and I've seen a decent variety so far. You can also gain specific armor and weapon sets from a boss, and equipping 3 pieces grants you a set bonus, giving you just that little bit of an incentive to go grind the boss out a bit to complete the set. I definitely see some potential for build crafting, but I wasn't able to put together a killer build just yet. The biggest positive I can give Towerborne though is that it has a solid gameplay loop for a co-op game. Missions aren't super long, so it's easy to keep running them back to back and inching closer to that next venture mission. Everything feels really seamless too. We can play a bunch of missions, and if someone needs to run back to the belfry to upgrade real quick, they can do that on their own without leaving the group or forcing all of us back to the hub either. All of your progress is shared as well, so you don't have to worry about losing progress while you're in your friend's map. And speaking of the map, it's freaking huge. There's definitely a ton of potential here, so let's wrap this up with some final thoughts. Aside from the combat and gameplay, I just want to mention just how good this game looks and sounds too. This is coming from the developers behind the Banner Saga, which had some stellar art direction, so I'm very happy that they brought that same level of craft to Towerborne. The background art feels super vibrant and alive with subtle animations and some really nice particle effects too. The soundtrack so far is another highlight. The battle themes are great, but it's the calmer music that plays in the hub or the world map that really stood out to us. Now, 2 more things that I want to talk about here, and they kind of go hand in hand, and that's how this is a live service game and it's in early access. Right now, Towerborne is following a similar setup to that of Helldivers 2 with its war bonds. In Towerborne, you have a currency called Curios, which you get from completing jobs, and you can use this to unlock cosmetics along 2 different progression paths. The only thing you can purchase from the store tab is the Gold Founders Pack, since the Silver Founders Pack is required to play the game. Which brings us to early access. Currently, to dive into the game, you do have to purchase the Silver Founders Pack, which retails for $25 US. This gets you a cosmetic armor set, an emote, and a couple other goodies aside from access to the game. Normally, this wouldn't be out of the ordinary, except for the fact that the game is planning to be free to play when it launches onto 1.0 sometime next year. The other thing to consider is that the team have stated that your progress will not carry over from the early access build, and there may in fact be multiple wipes throughout the early access process, meaning you could lose your progress even before the 1.0 update. Now, I say all of those things as things to keep in mind should you choose to dive into Towerborne right now. But this is an impressions video, and apart from all that, so far our impressions of Towerborne are pretty positive. They've totally nailed the combat, and it's already started to get its hooks into me with its solid gameplay loop. It remains to be seen how the game can evolve over time, but not for nothing, this is the most excited I've been for a live service game in a while, and that definitely counts for something. That's all for today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'm curious, are you playing Towerborne? Is this something you guys are excited for? Are you waiting for 1.0? Sound off in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, we cover all things co-op games, so make sure you subscribe and follow us on our socials for more co-op content. Lastly, a big thank you to our Patreon producers who help us keep the channel running. We'll catch you next time on another episode of The Co-op Bros.